After 60, there is a mistake many good people make without ever realizing it. They start trying harder to eat healthy, but the very foods they trust most may be quietly putting more pressure on their kidneys. Not candy, not fast food, not soda. Sometimes the foods that create the problem are the ones that look the cleanest on the plate. A green smoothie in the morning, a baked potato at dinner, a glass of beet juice because someone online called it heart healthy, a big spoonful of tomato sauce over pasta, a beautiful bunch of leafy greens that looks like the picture of perfect nutrition. And that is exactly why this matters. Because when a food looks healthy, you stop questioning it. You stop measuring it. You stop being careful with it. You begin to think, this is good for me, so more must be better. But after 60, and especially if you have been told to watch your kidney function, your creatinine, your eGFR, your blood pressure, your blood potassium, or your risk of kidney stones, your body may no longer handle certain vegetables the way it used to. That does not mean vegetables are bad. It means your kidneys may not be as forgiving as they once were. And the difficult part is this. Your kidneys usually do not complain in an obvious way at first. They do not always wave a red flag. Sometimes the signs are quiet. You feel more drained than usual. Your rings feel tighter by evening. Your ankles leave small marks in your socks. Your body feels puffy, slow, or just a little off. And because these changes happen gradually, many people simply blame age. They tell themselves, well, maybe this is just what getting older feels like. Sometimes that is true. But sometimes your body is asking for less burden, not more patience. I'm Dr. Michael Hardee, and in this video I want to walk you through 5 vegetables and vegetable products that may silently add stress to the kidneys in some older adults, especially if you already have kidney concerns, high potassium, or a history of kidney stones. Then I'll show you 4 gentler options that may help you build meals that feel lighter, safer, and easier on your body. And please stay with me, because the most dangerous foods on this list are not the ones most people suspect. In fact, 2 of them are often praised as health foods. Let's start with the first one, and this is one of the biggest surprises for people trying to eat clean. Spinach. Now at first, spinach sounds like one of the last foods anyone should worry about. It is green. It is natural. It is in salads, omelets, juices, wraps, soups, and smoothies. It shows up in health magazines, detox recipes, and fitness plans. It has been sold to the public for years as the symbol of discipline and good eating. That is exactly why people let their guard down with it. The issue is not that spinach is poisonous. The issue is that in certain people, especially those who are prone to calcium oxalate kidney stones, spinach can bring a heavy oxalate load. And if your kidney function is reduced, that is not always something to ignore. Think of it this way. If your kidneys are already working like an older vacuum that still runs but does not pull as strongly as it used to, foods high in oxalates can add more debris for that machine to deal with. One serving here and there may not cause trouble for everybody, but repeated heavy use can become a different story. And this is where many people make the mistake. They do not eat a few spinach leaves with dinner. They pack a blender with it. They press it down. They mix it with fruit. They drink it in 5 minutes and feel proud because it tastes healthy. But the body does not judge food by your intentions. It responds to the load you give it. When you eat a salad, there is chewing, there is bulk, there is fullness, and usually there is a natural stopping point. When you liquefy that same food, you can take in far more than you realize. What looked like a simple drink may actually be a concentrated flood. And older adults are especially vulnerable to this kind of mistake because many of them are trying to be proactive. They are not being careless. They are trying to protect themselves. They hear that greens are good, so they double the greens. They hear that smoothies are healthy, so they drink them every day. But healthy is not the same thing as right for your kidneys. If you have had kidney stones before, especially calcium oxalate stones, or your doctor has talked to you about potassium or kidney function, Spinach is one of those foods that deserves a second thought. Not fear, just respect. There is a big difference. You do not have to panic over a few leaves in a mixed salad. But turning spinach into a daily concentrated habit can be a very different burden. And after 60, the repeated burden matters more than the occasional bite. That brings us to the second food, and this one is so common that people almost never think of it as risky. Potatoes. White potatoes, sweet potatoes, mashed potatoes, roasted potatoes, baked potatoes, potato soup, fries at family dinners, hash browns at breakfast. Potatoes feel soft, simple, homey, almost innocent. But for someone with kidney issues, potatoes can carry one major concern: potassium. Now, potassium is not the enemy. Your body needs potassium. Your muscles need it. Your heart needs it. It is an essential mineral. The problem comes when the kidneys cannot clear potassium efficiently. When that happens, levels can rise too high, and high potassium is not something to take lightly because it can affect the heart. This is why potatoes become tricky. They do not look extreme. They do not taste dangerous. They do not give you the feeling that you are doing anything wrong. They feel like comfort food. But comfort food can still create strain. Imagine an older cashier working alone at the end of a long shift. If one or two customers come through, she can manage. But if a whole line suddenly piles up at once, the system slows down. That is what can happen when weakened kidneys are asked to process more potassium than they can comfortably handle. And many people over 60 eat potatoes in portions that are far larger than they realize. A mound of mashed potatoes, a full baked potato, a second scoop because it tastes mild and safe, sweet potatoes because they sound more nutritious. Again, this is not about calling potatoes bad. It is about understanding that nutritious does not automatically mean unlimited. Some people are told that soaking or boiling potatoes can help reduce some potassium, and yes, certain cooking methods can help lower the amount. But this is where people get overconfident. They hear one helpful tip and turn it into permission. They think, well, I soaked it, so now it does not count. It still counts. Preparation methods can help, but they do not turn a high potassium food into a free food. Portion still matters. Frequency still matters. Your lab values still matter. And here is something else people rarely think about. Potato meals are often paired with other potassium-heavy foods. Tomato sauce on the side, cooked greens, beans, juice, a larger serving of meat. Little by little, the whole plate becomes heavier than it looks. So if your doctor has told you to watch your potassium, if your kidney numbers are not where they should be, or if you are dealing with chronic kidney disease, potatoes are one of those foods to approach with intention, not autopilot. The third one is beets, and for some people, beet juice may be the bigger problem than beets themselves. In recent years, beets have gotten a glowing reputation. People talk about them as if they are a miracle food. Good for blood flow, good for stamina, good for blood pressure, good for circulation, good for exercise. And because that message has spread so widely, many older adults have started drinking beet juice with complete confidence. That confidence is what makes it risky, because juice changes the way a food hits your body. When you sit down and eat beets as part of a normal meal, there is chewing, pacing, fullness, and usually a built-in limit. But when beets are juiced, you can swallow a concentrated amount very quickly without feeling like you consumed much at all. That is how people accidentally turn a food into a load. And beets can matter for two reasons. They can be significant for potassium, and they also matter for oxalates, which is important for people with a history of calcium oxalate kidney stones. So here is the trap. A person hears one good thing about beets, starts drinking them in concentrated form, and never stops to ask whether their own kidneys are the kind that can handle that habit well. This happens all the time in health culture. A food gets promoted for one benefit, and people forget that their body is not just one body part. A food that may support one area in one person may still create stress somewhere else in another person. That is why wisdom matters more than trends. Your body is not a social media experiment. If you are dealing with kidney concerns, your goal is not to prove how healthy your grocery cart looks. Your goal is to reduce unnecessary strain. And beet juice can be especially misleading because it feels so virtuous. It is deeply colored, earthy, natural, vegetable-based. It feels like the opposite of junk. But natural is not a safety guarantee. Hemlock is natural. Poison ivy is natural. Nature has never promised that everything beneficial for one person is harmless for everyone. So if you have a history of kidney stones, high potassium, or reduced kidney function, do not turn beet juice into a daily ritual just because someone on the internet called it smart. Your labs matter more than the trend. Now let's move to number 4. And this one is hiding in plain sight in countless kitchens. Concentrated tomato products. I am not mainly talking about a thin slice of tomato on a sandwich. I am talking about tomato paste, thick tomato sauce, canned tomato puree, tomato juice, ketchup used heavily, and meals built around a dense tomato base. Why does that matter? Because concentration changes the load. A fresh tomato is one thing. A reduced, thickened, heavily used tomato product is something else. When tomatoes are cooked down, the amount of potassium packed into that serving can become much more significant. And people often eat these foods in ways that multiply the impact. A big plate of pasta covered in sauce, meatballs simmered in tomato gravy, soup made from concentrated tomato base, chili with tomato paste, leftovers the next day, then more sauce later in the week. By itself, each serving may not seem dramatic, but kidneys do not experience your meals as isolated events. They experience your eating patterns. That is what people miss. A food does not have to feel aggressive to become repetitive stress. Think of concentrated tomato products like receiving too many small charges on a credit card. One charge may not look serious, but if they keep showing up day after day, the total becomes much larger than you expected. And there is another reason these foods are tricky. They feel homemade, and homemade gives people emotional permission. They think, I cooked this myself. I did not order fast food. This must be fine. Homemade can absolutely be better than ultra-processed food in many situations. But homemade is not the same thing as kidney-friendly. A burden made in your own kitchen is still a burden. The good news is that this does not mean your meals have to become flavorless. It means you may need to become more strategic. Smaller amounts of tomato, more flavor built from garlic, onion, herbs, lemon, vinegar, roasted vegetables, and salt-free seasoning blends that help the food feel alive without piling on the same mineral load. You do not need to punish your taste buds to care for your kidneys. You just need to stop assuming that all red sauces are harmless. Now, number 5 may surprise even people who already know spinach can be an issue. Swiss chard. Swiss chard looks beautiful on the plate. Deep green leaves, bright stems, fresh, elegant, nutrient-rich. It appears in healthy cookbooks and expensive grocery stores. It has the kind of image that makes people feel they are making a high-level nutrition choice. But for some people with kidney concerns, Swiss chard can be a double-weight food. Why? Because it can matter both for potassium and for oxalates. That combination is what makes it more complicated than it looks. If a food carries one thing your kidneys need watched, that is already worth noting. When it carries two, it deserves more respect. Picture an older person carrying grocery bags up the front steps. One bag may be manageable. Two heavy bags can change the whole effort. Swiss chard can be that kind of food for certain people. Not flashy danger, not instant pain, just extra weight on a system that may already be tired. And what makes Swiss chard especially deceptive is that nobody sees it as risky. People are suspicious of greasy takeout. They are suspicious of candy. They are suspicious of soft drinks. But they are not suspicious of leafy vegetables with bright stems and a wholesome reputation. That is the deeper lesson in all of this. The foods that quietly stress the kidneys are often not the foods people feel guilty about. They are the foods people feel proud of. And when pride enters the picture, caution tends to disappear. So if you are over 60, if you have chronic kidney disease, diabetes, blood pressure issues, kidney stones, or if your doctor has asked you to monitor potassium or kidney labs, this is the moment to shift the question. Stop asking only, is this food healthy? Start asking, is this food easy on my kidneys? Because those are not always the same question. Now, after hearing those 5 foods, some people become tense and think, so what am I supposed to eat? That is why the next part matters even more. Because kidney-friendly eating should not feel like food fear. It should feel like relief, clarity, and smarter substitutions. Let's talk about 4 gentler choices that can help you build meals that still feel satisfying. The first one is cauliflower. Cauliflower is not glamorous. It does not have the image of a miracle vegetable. Nobody brags about it the way they brag about trendy greens or fancy juices. But that is exactly what makes it so useful. It is simple, versatile, and for many people with kidney concerns, much easier to work into everyday meals. One reason cauliflower helps is that it can replace heavier starch-centered habits without making the plate feel empty. Mashed cauliflower can step in where a large pile of mashed potatoes used to be. Roasted cauliflower can fill space on the plate without bringing the same kind of load as certain higher potassium sides. Cauliflower soup can feel warm, soft, and comforting without being as heavy as other choices. And this matters more than people realize. Because most older adults are not actually resisting healthy eating. What they are resisting is the feeling of loss. They do not want every meal to feel like a punishment. They do not want dinner to feel like a reminder that their body has changed. Cauliflower helps solve that emotional problem. It lets you keep the comfort while lightening the burden. That is one of the smartest things you can do for long-term consistency. If a food plan feels depressing, people quit. If it feels familiar and manageable, they stay with it. So no, cauliflower does not need to be exciting. It needs to be useful. And useful foods are often the ones that quietly protect you over time. The second gentler choice is red bell peppers. Red bell peppers bring something that many kidney-conscious meals desperately need: brightness. When people are told to cut back on salt, rich sauces, or certain comfort foods, food can start to feel flat. The appetite drops, the joy disappears. And once that happens, people either stop eating well or they go back to old habits out of frustration. That is why color, crunch, and natural sweetness matter. Red bell peppers can make a plate feel fresh and appealing without depending on heavy seasoning. You can slice them raw, roast them, stir-fry them lightly, add them to eggs, put them in salads, or mix them into simple meals that need life. They help food feel like food again. And that emotional lift matters. A healthier meal is much easier to stick with when it still looks inviting. There is also something psychologically powerful about replacing, rather than merely removing. It is one thing to say, don't eat that. It is much better to say, here is something colorful, flavorful, and easier on your body that can go in its place. That is how habits change. Not through fear alone, but through better options that still feel human. The third choice is garlic. Garlic may be one of the most underestimated ingredients in a kidney-conscious kitchen. Why? Because garlic helps solve one of the biggest problems people face when they try to eat in a more protective way: the fear that everything will become bland. A lot of older adults hear the words low sodium, kidney diet, or blood pressure diet, and immediately imagine a life sentence of tasteless food: plain vegetables, dry meals, no enjoyment, no comfort, no appetite. That fear is real, and it causes people to resist change before they even begin. Garlic helps break that resistance. A little garlic in olive oil, a little garlic in soup, a little garlic mixed into roasted vegetables or gentle sautés. The smell alone changes the emotional experience of the meal. Suddenly the food feels warmer, fuller, richer, and more complete. And when food feels satisfying, People stop chasing extra salt, extra sauce, and extra heaviness just to make a meal feel worth eating. That is a small shift with a big payoff. Garlic also has the advantage of being familiar. You do not need to learn a strange recipe or buy something expensive. It is already part of the language of home cooking, which means it is easier to adopt, easier to repeat, and easier to trust. And when you are helping older adults change the way they eat, trust matters. People do not build lasting habits around foods that feel foreign or fussy. They build habits around foods that slip naturally into real life. Garlic does that beautifully. Now, the fourth gentler choice is cabbage. Cabbage may be one of the most overlooked vegetables in the grocery store, but that is part of its strength. It is affordable, flexible, filling, and easy to use in many different meals. You can steam it, sauté it lightly, add it to soup, use it in slaws, tuck it into wraps, or simply cook it down until tender and comforting. Cabbage is one of those quiet foods that does not promise miracles. It just shows up and does its job. And that may be exactly what many people need after 60. Not another dramatic cleanse. Not another powdered superfood. Not another online nutrition trend. Just a dependable food that makes meals easier, lighter, and less complicated. Cabbage is also helpful because it can help bulk up the plate in a way that feels satisfying. And that matters when you are trying to cut back on foods that may be harder on the kidneys. People need volume. They need the meal to feel real. They need to finish eating without feeling deprived. That is one reason simple vegetables often outperform trendy health foods in the real world. Trendy foods impress people. Simple foods sustain them. And after 60, sustainability is more valuable than excitement. By now, you can probably see the deeper message behind this entire conversation. Kidney-conscious eating is not about becoming afraid of vegetables. It is about becoming more selective with the kinds of vegetables, the forms they come in, and the portions you repeat over and over. A food may be perfectly fine for one person and too much for another. A food may be reasonable in whole form, but much heavier in juice, concentrate, or oversized portions. A food may sound healthy in a general nutrition article and still not be the right everyday choice for someone with kidney disease, high potassium, or a history of kidney stones. That is why blanket advice causes so much confusion. People hear, "This food is healthy," and they think the story ends there. It does not. Your body finishes the story. So if you are over 60, here is the gentle truth I want you to remember. Protecting your kidneys is often less about dramatic sacrifices and more about repeated everyday adjustments. A smaller serving of potatoes, less tomato concentrate, more caution with spinach smoothies, more awareness around beet juice, a second thought before piling up Swiss chard. And then, on the other side, easier choices like cauliflower, red bell peppers, garlic, and cabbage that help meals still feel comforting, colorful, and normal. Those may sound like small changes, but small changes done consistently are often what give the body the greatest relief. Your kidneys do not need perfection from you. They need cooperation. They need you to notice what keeps overloading the system and give them a little more breathing room. And if your doctor has told you that your potassium is high, your kidney function is reduced, your eGFR is lower than it should be, or you have had calcium oxalate kidney stones before, please do not build your diet around internet enthusiasm. Build it around your own labs, your own condition, and the guidance of someone who understands renal nutrition. That is not fear. That is wisdom. A wise person is not someone who chases every health trend. A wise person is someone who learns what their own body can handle and what it no longer tolerates as easily as it once did. If this message helped you, remember the 5 foods to be more careful with: spinach, potatoes and sweet potatoes, beet juice and heavy beet habits, concentrated tomato products, and Swiss chard. And remember the 4 gentler options: cauliflower, red bell peppers, garlic, and cabbage. The next time you stand in your kitchen, I do not want you to ask only, is this good for me? Ask one more question. Is this kind to my kidneys? That one question can change your shopping, your cooking, your portions, and over time, even the way you feel in your own body. I'm Dr. Michael Hardee, and before you go, let me leave you with this. Getting older does not mean your body has stopped listening. It means your body is asking for a different kind of care. Not harsher care, smarter care, more thoughtful care. The kind of care that notices patterns. The kind of care that stops calling every discomfort just age. The kind of care that understands that what looks healthy on the outside may not always be gentle on the inside. You do not have to change your life overnight. You do not have to empty your kitchen in fear. You do not have to become perfect starting tomorrow morning. Just begin with the next choice, the next grocery list, the next dinner plate, the next side dish, the next habit you repeat. Because every lighter choice is one less thing your kidneys have to wrestle with. Every smarter portion is a little less pressure. Every better substitution is a quiet vote for the body that has carried you through all these years. And that body still matters. So take a breath, relax your shoulders, give yourself credit for learning. Then take what you learned today into your next meal, not with fear, but with calm attention. Your kidneys have worked for you every single day of your life. Maybe now is the time to make their job a little easier.